Hey, everybody. Welcome to my talk. Today, I'm going to tell you all about how we built Khanmigo, our tutor for every student and our teaching assistant for every teacher. My name is Shawn Jansepar. I am the Director of Engineering at Khan Academy, specifically for the learner experience team, but also have been leading the Khanmigo platform effort. So this has been many months in the making, but before I kind of dive into Khanmigo, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of the history of the online ed tech landscape in Khan Academy over the last 10 or so years. So going back even further, if you look into the ed tech landscape, you can kind of think about calculators really as educational technology. And even back then, it was feared that students would become overly reliant on calculators and lose their understanding of mathematical concepts and mental calculation skills. And there was also concerns about fairness and equity. If not all students had access to calculators, how are we going to level the playing field, which is obviously everybody's goal. So I feel like you can probably get a sense of that's starting to sound familiar with things coming around education and AI. So the brief story of Khan Academy, for those of you who don't know, Sal started making videos in 2004 for his cousins who he was tutoring, and he put them on YouTube where they exploded. They tended to like the video recorded version of Sal even more than Sal himself, but that's because they could pause him, they could rewind him. They didn't have to worry about, judgment or anything like that. And so in 2009, he quit his day job to start Khan Academy, a nonprofit with a mission to create a world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And we went from that to today, which is we have 137 million registered users. And in 2012, there was really relatively only a few online ed tech tools. Khan Academy was kind of the new hot online supplemental tool for learning. But there was, maybe a couple other tools, but there was mostly, chalkboards and textbooks that we were competing with. Fast forward 11 years later, and there's a proliferation of tools in the classroom, and teachers are having to juggle so much. So, and also, not only is Khan Academy in the classroom as a tool that teachers are using, but it's also used heavily outside of the classroom. So in 2019 alone, that number of ed tech tools increased by 90%. And on average, students access 143 unique ed tech tools in a given school year. So outside of the classroom, there's tools like Duolingo for language learning, Coursera for learning university courses, et cetera, et cetera. There's just ed tech has been exploding in the last 10 or so years. So why Khanmigo? Why did we decide to build this tool? You probably have seen these headlines over the course of the last many months, especially when ChatGPT entered the fray. People are worried, is the essay dead? How is anyone ever going to evaluate essays? ChatGPT is used heavily for cheating, and there's a lot of negativity around AI and its ability to have an impact on the classroom. Most people thought of it as negative impact. But we believe that artificial intelligence can really help us enhance human intelligence and potential. So over the last few months, in the beginning, in around December, November, when ChatGPT came out, there was a lot of negativity. In the last couple months, there's been kind of a shift in that narrative lately. People are starting to catch onto the potential of large language models and how they hopefully will outweigh the risks. And I think you can kind of see how that's very similar to the calculator. With the calculator, people were worried about how are we going to get access to as many students as possible, and our people are going to lose the ability to kind of think for themselves. And I think with AI, there's those similar concerns, but they're starting to see that we're going to be able to largely mitigate those concerns, and hopefully the benefits will outweigh the risks. So the opportunity that lay before us is really to realize this 2 sigma problem that Benjamin Bloom outlined in his 2 sigma problem study, which proved that the average tutored student would end up being above 98% of other students in that control classroom. So a student who is to get tutored in a one-on-one mastery-based setting would end up being better than 98% of classrooms in that control class, which is pretty astounding. And if a student was getting a mastery-based learning within a classroom, that's still a benefit. But in a classroom setting where there's 30 students to one teacher, it is incredibly hard to build this personalized experience and to be able to help each and every student with the gap that they're at in any particular area of where they're learning, and be able to help diagnose that gap, just because simply there's too many students. And so when we were introduced to GPT-4, we kind of viewed it as an opportunity to significantly accelerate our roadmap for providing that one-on-one tutoring experience. And that's where Khanmigo comes into the picture. We view this as the solution to the two sigma problem that Benjamin Bloom really only could have dreamed of. How can we provide that ability to give you one-on-one tutoring on demand through a system that knows where you're at in your learning journey immediately, and that provides no judgment to you whenever you ask a question? AI isn't judging you. It's not criticizing you. It's just there to be helpful. So that's our vision for Khanmigo. It's a tutor for every student, and it's a teaching assistant for every teacher. So what do we know about how students learn more? We know that they learn more when they're actively engaged with the material that they're about to learn. When they work on material that is just at the edge of what they can do, when provided with only a little bit of support, get immediate feedback on their responses to new material being learned, and see value in what it is that they're learning. Again, that's very hard to do in a classroom-based setting. So how are we doing all four of these things with Khanmigo? So for engaging students, imagine this scenario. A student is reading a chapter in Great Gatsby, and one of the things they're being asked is what the significance of the green light is. Well, maybe one thing they could do, rather than trying to sort that all themselves, is why not just ask Jay Gatsby yourself directly to the author? And so we can kind of simulate you being able to talk to authors of books or the characters directly themselves. In terms of support, how many students are sitting in the class with their hand up, waiting for a teacher to help waiting for help for themselves while the teacher's finishing helping other students? How many students are stuck at home on a problem where they don't have access to their teacher and maybe their parent can't help them? And what if you don't know what the next step is and you just want to check, am I doing this the right way? These are things that Khanmigo can help with. Khanmigo is going to be available on demand at all times, at home or in the classroom. You don't have to wait for that teacher to come by. You can immediately get that help that you need. And it will do it without giving you the answer. So if you were to ask Khanmigo, hey, can you just give me the answer? It will say, no, my goal is to help you learn and understand the process. I won't give you the answer, but I'm here to guide you on a step-by-step journey. And then it can kind of just give you immediate feedback on those math steps. So if you gave it, hey, I think the next step is this, it can kind of help you understand, well, why did you get there? What might have your mistake been? And then kind of help you reverse engineer that and help you get to the right answer step by step in conjunction with the AI. It can do it on writing as well. So imagine, this is one of our prototype user interfaces where you're just asking for feedback, and the AI scans your entire essay, and you say, okay, I want, in this instance, I want feedback on language and vocabulary. It'll highlight a specific phrase and say, maybe this is a bit too conversational for an academic essay. Can you make it more formal? So it can really kind of immediately pinpoint it, rather than you writing an essay, thinking you've done the best job possible, submitting it to your teacher, then your teacher gives you all this feedback. That feedback loop is incredibly long. The ability to write an essay with an AI in this way helps you really shorten those feedback loops. On programming, it's the same thing. So Khanmigo has full context of the programming challenge that this student is working on. And when it says why is the only left cloud moving in this scenario? You're building a program that has clouds moving in certain directions, and it notices what the bug is and what you still need to change in order to make that work. And in terms of seeing value in what they're learning, Khanmigo can help you with that as well. One of the first things that we actually built when putting together Khanmigo was the ability for students to ask, why should I care about learning this? Why does this matter? And not only will it give a reason for why it might matter, but first it'll ask you, well, what do you care about? If you said soccer, it's going to try to relate, this algebra problem to soccer or whatever your interest might be. It'll try to find a way to make it relatable to the things that you're interested in your life. So this is just a couple of examples. So how would equation like in the video be used to create a video game? So it can help you understand how this algebra problem might relate to a video game, for example. I think it'll be really popular with a lot of kids out there. So this is just a framework that exists out there in the world that try to help us move learning to be more of this passive way of learning. You're just receiving information, all the way to what would be much better for student engagement is something that's a lot more interactive. So in the case of education up until now, passive learning is watching a video or receiving a lecture or reading an article. But in the tutor example, it's maybe the same thing, reading an explanation from a tutor. Okay, that's fine, but can we do better? So in an example of active learning, maybe highlighting or underlining or paraphrasing. But in the tutor example, it's asking a tutor a question. For constructive, examples of this are self-explaining or drawing a concept map. But in the tutor example, it's learner giving an explanation for an answer. And so you could actually have the AI ask the learner, hey, can you explain this to me to prove your conceptual understanding of the thing that you're trying to learn? And then lastly, interactive modes of learning. So you might have a debate in school, but in the tutor example, you might have a tutor and a learner co-writing a story together, or you might have the learner debate with the AI. So that's kind of just a few examples of Khanmigo and how it works and how we think it can transform learning. And there's a lot more we have in our roadmap, which I'll get to in a second. But let me just talk a little bit about how did we build this product? So I like to say to people that we built the world's most advanced tutor in 3 months. Obviously, we didn't do that alone. We worked with our partners at OpenAI to leverage their amazing GPT-4 large language model. So what happened was last year, we got access to GPT-4 in the latter half of 2022, and we started building prototypes in December. Those prototypes were showing a lot of promise early on. And what we said was, we really need to just get together as a group because most of us work remotely. And then so we decided to fly down to San Francisco and further build that prototype and also test it at Khan Lab School, which is a school that Sal founded that implements a lot of these mastery-based, project-based learning principles. And so we decided to test it with the students at Khan Lab School, and then also do some red teaming with OpenAI to really, to test the limits, see how we can break it, see how we can get it to say bad things so that we, can work with OpenAI to catch those before our students do. And that was a big part of the initial development of Khanmigo. And then after that, after we tested with some Khan Lab students who absolutely loved it, and again, especially loved the part about asking, why should I care about learning this? Which goes to show you, I think in our education system, we could continue to do more to help students understand why what they're doing is actually relevant to the real world, considering how actively that was used during the prototyping and is still used. And then so after the success of that, we decided, hey, let's get more of the company involved. Let's do a company-wide hackathon involving all of the engineers, designers, product managers, data analysts, etc. And so we did that. We kind of diverged with a bunch of different ideas. And then the ideas that we thought, hey, these could be viable for the launch that we were planning on doing on May 14th March 14th, alongside of OpenAI's GPT-4 launch. So once we had a few of those ideas, we decided to pick a few of the key ones that we thought were really viable for launch, that we were really excited about. And so we ended up doing multiple AI sprints after that hackathon for those kind of few selected projects. And then kind of had a central coordinator. That was a big part of what I was doing, aligning those teams and making sure we were all the dependencies were met and that we were going to align to our launch deadline. And then as we were leading up to the launch and the many weeks after launch, we were doing daily mission control meetings just to make sure that, everything across the different teams, not just within the product, design, engineering orgs, but also marketing, sales, all the different teams involved were aligned on everything. And we were talking and over communicating as much as possible. So a few keys to our success. I think one is that we really resisted perfectionism. We didn't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And not to say that meant we cut corners in terms of safety or whatnot, but what it meant was that we tried to rapidly prototype as much as possible to find what we thought was going to work well for students. Another thing that we did was we had a time box deadline, which helped us avoid Parkinson's law, which says that work tends to expand to fill all time available. We had a deadline. We wanted to launch alongside of the worldwide announcement of GPT-4. So that was actually really healthy for us. We trusted our intuition. We have a huge amount of experience at Khan Academy, learning science experience, ed tech experience. And so we leveraged that because it was going to be really hard to figure out, well, what are teachers and learners exactly going to want out of this product? And speaking of teachers, by the way, I mainly focused on learners on this presentation, but there is a whole set of teacher functionality that we're building as well. And then another thing that we did was we rapidly iterated. We did what we called demo-driven development, which was inspired by a book called Creative Selection, where the idea was that rather than spending many months defining requirements and then taking those requirements and creating design mockups and then passing those design mockups to engineers, instead we just got designers and engineers and product managers sitting in a room together and building prototypes and then demoing those prototypes to the executive team, getting feedback, having those teams go off and continuing to iterate in that way. And I think that was a really successful method of development for us. And we've actually kind of shifted to doing a lot of these things as our new kind of standard product development framework at Khan Academy. A few kind of just like insider bits of information that we did in order to kind of improve this application even more. One of them was something called chain of thought prompting, which is an approach to improve the reasoning ability of large language models. So large language models tend to do math, especially math, significantly better if you can prompt them to kind of think through their thoughts out loud. But obviously you wouldn't want the AI's thoughts, to get printed onto the screen, right? You just want the steps, the recommendations to the student to be the thing that you see. And so what we do first is an initial call where we ask the AI, hey, think through this out loud. How did the student make a mistake? It's kind of like what you would do in your own brain in some ways, right? If you were tutoring a student, first you'd kind of really think it through, and then you'd say, okay, I see where the misconception is. Now I'm going to apply it to the student. It's kind of the same thing here. And so when we did this, we had the AI kind of Khanmigo do its internal thoughts, and then we pass this data to the next call to the AI to say, hey, here were your thoughts. Now, what do you advise the student to do? So this made the math significantly stronger. So challenges, concerns, and what I'm excited about moving forward. So safety is a top priority for us, of course, which is why we've put a ton of functionality and features for parents, guardians, and teachers, and we're really trying to put them in the driver's seat. So we've given parents and as well as guardians and teachers the ability to monitor chat logs. They can see any activity that's going on between a student and Khanmigo. It'll alert parents and teachers when an appropriate conversation is taking place that they should be aware of. And then we're also using prompt engineering to keep the conversations as focused as possible. So a lot in the prompts to say if the student tries to talk about some other subject, keep them on track and keep them on the math content or the writing content or the programming content or whatever it is. We also heavily leveraged a number of different frameworks for ethics in AI and education, and we're going to continue to do so. There was a few members of our team that started during the hackathon, kind of built a framework out of these frameworks that we could use to apply when we were launching our features in March, and we continue to do so for future features as we're building things out. So what are some challenges ahead for us? One is just scaling costs. How can we get this to as many students' hands as possible and truly democratize one-on-one tutoring for every student on the planet? We have some strong plans, and we're kind of incrementally adding more capacity as we go. So that's just going to be, that is one of the things that's on the top of our minds. Another one is just accurate math. Khanmigo still makes the occasional math mistake. That's just an unsolved problem in the world of large language models today. And so this is a top area of focus for us, but it's also something we can't necessarily solve by ourselves. So we're working with many different partners to tackle this problem. And another one is avoiding hallucinations. Sometimes Khanmigo can still make up facts if it doesn't, if you ask it for a URL for something. We are doing a lot to inject URLs and detect that, but sometimes things slip and Khanmigo will give you a URL that doesn't exist. So, and we're working hard to detect and mitigate those challenges. Some excitement for the future. What are we excited about? Just a kind of a peek into our roadmap. One is something that we're calling AI memory. So extracting insights from conversations and injecting them into subsequent large language model API calls. So for instance, if you ever say, I love soccer, then rather than asking you later, if you say, why should I care about this? Rather than asking you, well, what do you care about? So I can give you an appropriate example, it'll already know you like soccer and it'll just be able to answer that right off the bat. Multi-user AI intermediated activities. So imagine a group tutoring session with the AI. Imagine 5 students are struggling with this skill, 10 students are struggling with another skill, and another 3 are struggling with a third skill. Imagine a world where the teacher can say, create breakouts, and an AI can tutor these 5 students in one chat room. Another AI can tutor those other 10 students who are struggling with concept, B in this chat room, and so on and so forth. So you can imagine kind of automated breakouts facilitated by an AI tutor, or AI facilitated debates between 2 students. Maybe the AI is scoring the 2 students. Imagine classroom-wide story creation. So each student getting a turn of creating a story with the AI. So you can imagine a lot of really fun and engaging classroom activities using this technology. Goal setting and study advisory. So imagine Khanmigo really is a tutor in every pocket that helps you on your full learning journey from early grade school through to college. And so much more. We really think we've only scratched the surface of what AI can do for the field of education. And there's a lot more magic to discover. And that's what our team is really focused on right now. And that is it. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. I hope you'll check out Khanmigo, and I hope this has piqued your interest even more so with regards to AI and education. So thank you so much.